Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, EDA's new non-infrastructure GPRA metrics and data collection process. I'm Brett Schwartz, Associate Director at the NADO Research Foundation, and I'm really pleased to introduce this session for our colleagues at the U.S. Economic Development Administration. I was the recipient of multiple EDA grants, including one to fund our Stronger Said, Stronger Regions program and an upcoming project to provide leadership training for economic development district staff. We at the NADO Research Foundation are looking forward to hearing more about what to expect with these new reporting requirements for non-infrastructure awards. And by all accounts, this is an opportunity to capture meaningful data about the impact of these projects and how it will further EDA's efforts to really tell the story of its mission and how all of us are a key part of that story as partners and conveners. So as you'll hear more about today, when these new processes were piloted with a handful of organizations, there were no reports that this approach was any more burdensome or took any more time than how we've all reported in the past. So that's really encouraging to hear, and it's good news for all of us that we'll be providing better data to EDA without taking away too much time from what we really want to do, and that is to support communities and regions in becoming stronger, more resilient, and inclusive. So before I turn things over to Bernadette Grafton at EDA for the duration of the webinar, just a few quick logistical notes. The recording of today's webinar and all the slides will be made available shortly at eda.gov. You should also be receiving an email as well once those materials are available. So please share them with your colleagues who may also be interested. If you have a question, please type it in on the right side of the screen in the questions box. We have a very large group tuned in today, so we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. But if we didn't get to your question and you still have some thoughts, make sure to please follow up with EDA staff afterwards. You'll also be hearing about a website that has a lot of really good information for you as well, including some frequently asked questions, so you might have those answered there. And then finally, a short survey will pop up after you log off the webinar. Please take 2 to 3 minutes to provide some feedback, which will help with outreach and training on these new requirements. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bernadette Grafton for the rest of the session. Bernadette is a program analyst and the University Center Coordinator at EDA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Bernadette wears many hats at EDA, but today she will be your guide through these new processes and make sure you're all up to speed with what you need to know. She'll also facilitate the Q&A at the end with some of her colleagues at EDA who have also joined us on the call. So with that, Bernadette, thanks again for putting this together and looking forward to your presentation. So take it away.
Great. Thank you, Brett. Thanks for hosting us today. I'm really encouraged by the turnout, and I hope this material that you hear is helpful just to understand and prepare for performance reporting on your next EDA award. So let's just jump right in. So today I'm going to introduce the new instruments and metrics for EDA's non-infrastructure programs by first talking about the traditional performance measurement practices at EDA and then comparing them to the forms that actually just expired on November 30th that we're going to be replacing them with. So we will introduce the new instruments and briefly touch on the research and the motivation behind all of this, as well as the data that we'll be collecting. And then we'll talk through some of the more technical aspects, what you can expect in the short term from the implementation of this new process. So EDA collects and reports on performance measures in compliance with the Government Performance and Results Act of 1993 that was amended in 2010. This establishes requirements for all agencies to collect, analyze, and report on their performance. We have 2 goals to accomplish this. We have Performance Goal 1, which is focused on physical infrastructure investment. So these are our construction projects that promote private investment, private enterprise and job creation in economically distressed communities and regions. Grantees of our public works and economic adjustment assistance, physical infrastructure, and revolving loan fund projects are subject to reporting under this goal. We also have our Performance Goal 2, which focuses on our non-infrastructure investments, and these are the ones that really seek to build community capacity to achieve and sustain regional competitiveness and economic growth. So in this presentation, we'll be focusing on Goal 2 of the performance goals. So prior to November 30th, EDA has collected performance data using our ED 915, ED 916, 917, and 918 forms that many of you are likely familiar with. An example of the ED 917 is shown on this slide just for an example of what one of these forms was. The ED 915 for RLFs, just as a point of reference here, has been renewed for another 3 years for existing RLF grantees. So they'll be continuing to report on that traditional form. Just another note that all revolving loan fund grants awarded on or after June 1st of this past year are subject to the new processes that we're going to be covering in this presentation. So it's really important to understand the data that you're reporting doesn't just sit on a shelf. It's used in a number of ways. The data that are collected under GPRA are reported via departmental publications. They're reviewed by key stakeholders of EDA, such as the Office of Management and Budget, the Government Accountability Office, and Congress. Among many other uses, EDA's performance data and targets are tied to our annual budget requests and appropriations. So they're used to justify the work that EDA is doing. And this data is essential for telling your story and showing the impact of EDA's investments. There's also some federal requirements that necessitate EDA having better data. For example, the Foundations for Evidence-Based Policymaking Act of 2018. This requires all agencies to submit an annual plan to OMB and Congress, identifying, among other things, the data that the agency intends to collect, use, or acquire to facilitate our evidence-based policymaking. So it's important that we have good data to be able to do this. So what are the key differences between the expired ED 916, 17, and 918 and the new instruments? So the old forms are very program focused, for example, partnership planning, but there's also a form for the university centers, which was the 917, and then the trade adjustment and assistance for firms. They're narrow in scope, so they're very selective in terms of the outputs and the outcomes that we're able to collect data on. They're in PDF format, and they're annual. The new ED 916, 917, and 918 that we'll be covering later, they apply to all of EDA's non-infrastructure programs, which accommodates a variety of projects and intended outcomes. They're based on years of novel research by leading research institutions and EDA. We'll cover a little bit more about that shortly. And they're web-based. We're using Qualtrics to do this, and this allows for flexibility and easier record keeping. The data collection, instead of annual, will be semi-annual, which is the new ED 916. This is during the period of performance, and this instrument is going to be collecting information on the outputs and the activities of your actual award. There's also the annual form, which is the ED 917 or 918. This is for a period of 5 years, and this is focused on the outcomes of the work that you're doing. So what are we talking about here? So the revised new ED 916, 917, and 918 instruments are, as I said, grounded in years of research between EDA and leading research institutions such as SRI International and UNC Chapel Hill. One of the results of this research was the economic development logic model that you see here on the screen. From left to right, the logic model tracks the initial or the baseline conditions and capacities of a region where the organization is located. It tracks inputs, such as government funding, for example. We've got outputs or program activities, then capacity outcomes, which are intended to monitor a wide range of intermediate effects or the outputs or activities that are under the scope of work of your award. And then finally, the realized outcomes, which are the longer-term economic development outcomes. The list for the baseline conditions and the realized outcomes are not intended to be an exhaustive list. This is expected to evolve depending on different economic events. In this presentation, we're going to focus on the program outputs and the capacity outcomes, since these are the data that we're going to be collecting directly from EDA grantees with the new forms. All right, so on this slide, you can see the type of information that we're going to be collecting on a semi-annual basis. Remember, this is the ED 916. This is the semi-annual questionnaire that's focused on the outputs, the actual program activities that we just discussed that were mentioned in the logic model. While there is a lot going on this slide, we don't expect that every single category of outputs will apply to your project. Remember, I said this is very much focused on the scope of work of the EDA award. So when you're responding to the instrument, you'll be able to select only the categories and the questions that apply to your specific scope of work, and then you'll be able to bypass all the inapplicable ones. In fact, the logic that is in the Qualtrics instruments makes many of the questions invisible to you, so you won't even have to see them. If you're a recipient of a capital challenge grant, you'll be directed to a separate set of questions entirely, and it's bifurcated into seed fund activities and angel investment related questions. You will be expected to respond to the applicable questions on program outputs cumulatively on a semi-annual basis during the period of performance of your award. If under your grant scope of work, your organization serves clients or beneficiaries directly, you will receive the ED 917 sorry. Okay. There we go. You'll receive the ED 917. And once again, this instrument is organized into categories of questions, and there's a lot of flexibility to bypass categories that are not applicable to you. This instrument is split into two main sections. The first section is more about the traditional or the longer term outcomes, such as job creation and retention, private investment leveraged, operating revenue changes. These are more familiar data points that we're collecting already. In this section, you have the option to click not applicable or select an option that states that the outcomes are actually expected, but you just don't know them at the time you're responding to the questionnaire. The second section covers a broader set of any capacity outcomes, which allows you to report on important milestones and intended outcomes that are more specific to your award. So unlike before, we're going to be able to capture outcomes such as new product introductions, expansions of business networks, new financing, and human capital improvements. So we're going to be able to gather much more helpful information about the work you're actually doing than we used to, which will help tremendously in telling your story. The ED 918 is another annual one. This one mirrors the 917 annual, but this is intended for grantees who don't serve clients directly. This is more focused on grantees who organize or develop strategies, studies, and plans to achieve outcomes to help grow regional economies. So one thing to note here, as well as for the ED 917 on the previous slide, there are two categories of questions for organizational capacity that you can see in the lower right-hand corner. One of these is focused on strategies for building regional economies, the regional economic resilience. It's focused on collaboration with other entities, assisting with securing government and non-government funding for economic development projects, and developing an organizational strategy or planning tool. The other organizational capacity category is focused on the CEDS itself. This is very specific to the development or the update or implementation of a CEDS. So now that we've gone through some of those details, a few points that I want to make sure that you keep in mind as you prepare to begin reporting through the new instruments. Not all categories of questions will apply to your project. As I've stated before, these instruments are specific to your scope of work. So if you have 2 awards with EDA, you will be submitting questionnaires for each of those awards because we're capturing data on the work that you're doing under that award. But again, not all categories of questions will apply, so you'll be able to skip right through a number of categories that just don't apply to that particular award. You can request, you can see the questionnaires actually ahead of time on our website, which I will be showing you very shortly. And the last section of the categories, the last section of the questionnaires for all of them actually have an optional section to provide more information, like geographic information and a narrative or success story section. So you can submit that to us if you want. It helps us to understand a little bit more about the context of your project and just allows us to capture information that we weren't able to through the questions themselves. So that is an optional section. You'll see that when we go through a quick demo. And then all outcomes that you report should be attributable to the scope of work under the grant. So we're talking specifically about what the EDA grant is intended to do. Also, you can save your responses after you've submitted the questionnaires through Qualtrics. There's an option to save to PDF and save that for your own records for later reporting. And you can also, at any point in time while you're completing the questionnaire, if you need to pause and then return later, you can just get out of that and then go back in through the link that you'll receive via email and complete the questionnaire at a later time within a 1-month period. So you do have 1 month from the time you receive the link to complete the questionnaire. This doesn't have to be done all in one sitting. So what's next? So unless directed otherwise by your EDA program officer, if you have received a grant on or after June 1st of 2020, you should have received or will be receiving your first semi-annual questionnaire. The first cohort is just received their questionnaire earlier this week, actually. So we just kicked this off. And so those who received their awards in June received their first questionnaire. And then we'll be doing this on a regular basis, just figuring out who's due to report, sending out the questionnaires, and then again, you'll have a month to complete them. The semi-annual questionnaires, as I said, are distributed only during the period of performance of your grant, and the annual questionnaires are distributed for a period of 5 years since the start of the grant. We do have a website which has a number of helpful resources on it that I will show you here in just 1 second. So we urge you to familiarize yourself with that website and the resources on it if you haven't already. And then lastly, we have an email inbox that has been set up so you can submit any questions you have about the questionnaire itself, the data you should be reporting, the cadence, any questions at all you can submit to programevaluation@eda.gov. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to this website. All right, so our new performance data collection instruments and processes webpage has a lot of the information I've already covered, some of the background information here, and then we go into some of the more detailed information. Again, just reminding you, this is entirely web-based. You're not submitting a PDF form. You're not going to be downloading anything and then returning a completed form to us. This is a Qualtrics link that will be emailed to you. You'll click on that link, complete it, and then and submit it to us through that. So you should be prepared ahead of time by actually going to this website and looking at the PDF versions of the questionnaires so that you can get a sense of what data you might be collecting for your particular scope of work. So I will show you those PDFs shortly, but I just want to finish covering this section here first, where this goes through the cadence that you'll be following for any of your new EDA awards after June 1st. So the ED916, again, this is the semi-annual program outputs questionnaire. This is every 6 months during the period of performance. And just a little side note for RLF grantees, this questionnaire will be distributed according to the recipient's fiscal year. This is the only difference for RLFs, is that it's slightly different in the semi-annual reporting. This is for the fiscal year and only during the disbursement phase. So this is not calculated based on the period or the day the award began. This is calculated based on the recipient's fiscal year. The annual program outputs questionnaires are, again, annually for a period of 5 years, but for RLF grantees, this is calculated based on fiscal year and for a period of 5 years. Okay, lastly here, we have more information on the logic model that we went over a few minutes ago, but the PDFs, just want to briefly show you that you can click on these and you'll see exactly what you'll see when you go to the Qualtrics link. This is the first page when you receive your first questionnaire. This is what you'll see for the semi-annual. And as you go through this, you can get a sense ahead of time of the data that you should be collecting based on your scope of work. So I highly recommend that you familiarize yourself with these questions ahead of time so that you know and can be prepared, which will make submitting your questionnaires a lot faster. When we did a pilot program of all of this a little over a year ago, it might have been 2 years now, we had a set of grantees who worked with us as part of the pilot. We had representation from across our non-infrastructure programs, and everyone said that this was easy to follow, the logic was great, they didn't have any problem submitting. The amount of time it took to complete it was not significantly different from the normal GPRA forms that they're required to submit. And in many cases, I know that you guys are already tracking this information, and we're just looking to be able to get some of that information from you for our reporting purposes, but also so that we can tell your story more effectively. So I would encourage you to go through these questionnaires ahead of time, get a sense of the questions that are there. And then if you have any questions, even before you receive your questionnaire, go to the program evaluation at eda.gov, email them with any questions that you have. Just a helpful hint that it would be helpful for you ahead of time to identify any industry-specific NAICS codes and census tract numbers. There are a couple of questions that are location-specific, just trying to get a sense of where your activities are happening and what industry-specific NAICS codes might apply. So it's always easier to have that ready at the very beginning. We also have on this website a pre-recorded webinar for grantees. So we did this back in August and it's available, ready for you. Strongly recommend you take a look at this just to get a little bit more background information on all of it and what you should expect. This covers all of the new processes. And then we also prepared some demo videos based on program. So we have demo videos for the ED 916 and the annual, whether that be the 917 or the 918, it just depends on what type of grantee you are. We prepared little demos of what it might look like for you as that type of grantee to complete one of these forms. And in every case, it was 30 minutes or less. So as long as you have the data available to you, it should not be very time consuming. So that is the website. I think now might be a good time to pause and see if there are any questions.
So Bernadette, you should see in the chat window, send a bunch over to you that have come through during the presentation.
Yes, a lot of questions. So the most recent one is, can we test the questionnaire before it becomes live? So you can't test the questionnaire, but as I just demonstrated, you can see exactly what it's going to look like and all of the questions that exist within the questionnaire. So I would encourage you to just go through the PDF forms. We have all three of them, the 916, 917, and the 918 on our website. Another question, if our organization has more than one current EDA investment and did receive the email link this week, how do we know which grant to respond on behalf of? So any award that you received after June 1st of 2020 is going to be the award that you'll be reporting on through this new process. So if you have an EDA investment that you've had going on for more than a year now, you wouldn't be reporting on that one through this new process.
And then Bernadette, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
This is Jason Goodwin with EDA. Also, if you received a link this week, it means that the award will have been made in June of this year. So specifically, so if you have an award that happens to be after June as well, so in addition to what Bernadette said, it would be specifically the one that was made in June of this year, because the first ones that went out this week were those awards that were made in June.
Thanks. How will this affect EDA planning grants and CARES Act recovery grants? So I think this question might be about who is responding to these awards or to these questionnaires. All CARES Act awards will be covered under this. So if you have a CARES Act award that you received for planning purposes, then you'll be filling out these questionnaires for that. If you have a planning grant that has already existed prior to June 1st, then you wouldn't be reporting on that one. I'm not sure if that was the question itself. So if there's a clarification, that would be helpful on that. We had a partnership planning grant renewed on January 1st, 2020. Does this reporting requirement apply to us at this time? No, it would not. So that's a great question. What do you do if you have an award that began earlier this year or was renewed earlier this year, and you were expecting to report using the ED 918, the old ED 918? What do you do? So during this transition period, we can't have multiple versions of the same form going. So if you have an award that you were intending on reporting through the old versions of the GPRA on, you would just not be reporting GPRA information at this time. We would encourage you to continue to track that and report on your progress and on your outcomes through your progress reports to EDA, but you just won't be expected to report on GPRA data until you receive a new award. And you should be notified every time you get a new award moving forward. This will be part of the discussions during your kickoff meetings. So how does Grants Online fit into all of this? It doesn't. So this is entirely based on Qualtrics. There's no interface with Grants Online. You're not submitting anything anywhere except for responding to the link that you receive for the electronic Qualtrics link. Let's see. Does this reporting take the place of the required performance progress report? No. So you still are responsible for your financial reporting and your progress reporting. This is your performance metric reporting. So this was the government, the GPRA requirement that we are required to report on, and that we've been gathering information from you on. And some grantees that are under our other non-infrastructure programs besides planning may not be familiar with GPRA reporting, which is this is going to be a new thing, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to get some interesting data out of this that we just haven't been able to capture previously. So again, if you have any questions about GPRA, we feel free to reach out to any of us and take advantage of all of the resources that are on our website. In addition to this page that I was just showing you that cover our new data collection instruments, our regular performance page, eda.gov/performance, has a ton more information about GPRA, how it's used, what we've seen so far. We've got some data, tools, research reports, all of that, so you can familiarize yourself with GPRA that way if you would like. All right, another question. Should we contact our regional office with questions? Have they received training on this new approach? You should absolutely contact your regional office with questions. So we have provided training to everyone in EDA. We have resources that we're continuing to develop to make sure that everybody has the information they need to provide further guidance and training to their grantees. And if your regional point of contact can't answer a question for you, they can direct that to us, and we will get an answer to you if you have a question. This only applies to new grants. There were a couple of questions on that. Okay, is there anything else that's coming in?
Yeah, Bernadette, scroll down there. They're coming in fast and furious here. And Ryan, if you want to jump in with some context as well while we're pulling these together.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah, let me do that. Well, Bernadette's on the EDA performance measurement and program evaluation page. You see that yellow text box sort of to the right where there's some highlights in there. I'm sure that a lot of you are sort of saying like, we've never reported this like this before. Tell us why this changed. Tell us why now. Tell us why this is coming. And so let me just share a little bit with you and direct you to this page so that you can take a look at the actual report that this is coming from. This comes from one of our research and evaluation projects from a few years ago, where EDA started to, with the help of SRI, the Stanford Research Institute, and some analysts, some economists there, we really started to dive into how EDA and the work that we do at EDA supports economic development ecosystems in ways that are bigger than just the traditional kinds of infrastructure projects that people sort of used to think about as really part and parcel to EDA's value proposition. One of the things that we realized is, and you as participants in a lot of these programs that are based on these non-infrastructure investments, EDDs, UCs, regional development organizations, you folks understand that economic development is ecosystem building. And what's hard to, what has been in the past a little bit difficult for us to measure is just how that value proposition cascades up to the value proposition of EDA as a whole. It's easy for us relatively to measure the impacts and the outcomes of an infrastructure investment, right? If we build a wastewater treatment facility and it adds productive capacity to an industrial park or to a local ecosystem, and there's defined beneficiaries who are going to hire people, who are going to retain people, and who are going to continue to drive private investment in that asset, we can measure the tax valuation. We can measure the amount of plant and equipment that's put into that investment. And we can count the number of people who now have jobs or whose jobs have been retained. Those things are relatively straightforward. What has been traditionally more difficult to measure, but with the advent of big data and with the advent of sort of leveraging third-party data, we have the ability now, if we keep track, of how EDA's investments in non-infrastructure assets and in ecosystems can help to create economic development conditions and help to create economic development value propositions for all of EDA. And this has been a big part of sort of what's been missing from EDA's story. And by extension, it has been missing from your story. The thing that we have been asked or recommended, the recommendation that came from SRI to do this work is really about storytelling. It's how do you describe the value proposition of an economic development district? How do you describe the economic development value of a SEDS? And how does that lead to those job preserving, job opportunities, and private investment generating assets further down the road? And so all of this is tied up in EDA's value proposition, how we explain our value to congressional appropriators, how we tell your story and the story of how economic development happens is really part of this extended conversation. And that's really where this is coming from. So if you're really interested in it, I recommend that you take a look at the study. It's fascinating work. Put in a plug for EDA's research and national technical assistance programs who are doing this kind of thought leadership and sharing this kind of thought leadership. So just wanted to raise my hand and give you some context about where this is coming from, and hope that that all of these things, you'll see the value in us getting this kind of information.
Awesome. So there were a couple of other questions that I wanted to respond to. So one question that came through is about the 917 and 918, which again, reminder, those are the annual questionnaires and you'll only be completing one. It depends on what your scope of work is. The ED 917 is for grantees serving clients. The ED 918 is for grantees not serving clients. That determination is made by your EDA project officer at time of award or earlier as the materials are being reviewed. So that's not a decision point that you have to make because you'll be receiving the appropriate questionnaire when you're supposed to receive it. Again, those are annual, so you'll be receiving them once a year for a period of 5 years. That's regardless of the actual period of performance. Now remember how we used to do this is we had our old form for EDDs, for our partnership planning grantees, it was the ED 918, and you would receive that at 3, 6, and 9 years. Now we're only requiring you to submit for a total of 5 years. And it is once a year, and it does not take very long to complete the questionnaire. I know it looks very burdensome and overwhelming, but everything we've done so far would suggest that it's not. So I understand that some grantees may have awards that only last 2 years, but as a reminder, the 917 and the 918, those are looking at the outcomes of the work that you've done. So you may not see those outcomes for a few years after the period of performance has ended, and that's what we're trying to capture, are those outcomes that come after the work has actually completed. All right, are all university centers using 917? So with our old process, yes, all university centers were responding to the ED 917. That ED 917 has expired. Our new ED 917 is the annual questionnaire for grantees serving clients. So in most cases, university centers would be serving clients. I would expect that that would be the case. It's a technical assistance program. There are a couple of instances where that may not be true, depending on the scope of work of the university center, especially if that university center is much more focused on research or even applied research. So in that case, they would be responding to the ED 918. But again, that's not a decision point that you have to necessarily make. You're not choosing which form you're submitting. You're just you receive the link. It's at that point, it's a passive thing. So who will the link come from regarding when to report? So you'll receive the link. Aminata, do you want to chime in here about what it actually looks like?
Yeah, so you will, yes, Bernadette,
Yep.
Can you guys hear me well? Okay.
Yes.
You'll receive a link from Qualtrics. The subject will say ED, whatever the questionnaire it is that you're responding to. So for grantees that just received the ED 916, it said ED 916 semi-annual program outputs questionnaire. For when we send out the ED 917, we'll tailor the subject line to that. And in the body of the email, you'll see the link to the questionnaire. I saw a question while I was going through the chat about whether or not you had to use Internet Explorer or if you could use other browsers. You can use any browser. The cool thing is if you started answering the questionnaire on your laptop, but then you wanted to continue answering it on your phone, and if you clicked on the link in the email, you would be directed to Qualtrics, and it will take you exactly where you stopped. Obviously, you can click through. We have a table of contents that helps you to navigate between the blocks of questions. So if you started answering one category of questions and you don't have the data to complete that particular category at that moment, you can move to another category and answer those questions. So you can answer it on your phone, your tablet, your computer, and you'll just have to go back and click on the link and it'll take you exactly where you stopped. So we'll be sending the link through Qualtrics, and you'll see in the subject box what the actual questionnaire is, and we provide you our program evaluation at eda.gov email. And if there are any questions, I know we've received a couple already that you have when you receive the email about what questionnaire to answer, just know you're answering for the ED 916, it's 6 months after the start of your award. For the ED 917, it's a year after the start of your award. But if there's any confusion about, say you have multiple awards and you want more clarification, please always just reach out to us. It's no rush. Although we've already received 2 completed responses, and grantees had a month to complete this. So that just goes to show that if you've been keeping track of your data, it's really, easy to go through this. The logic is really sophisticated. You don't have to scroll through a bunch of questions that are not relevant to you, and you can just go straight to the point and answer those questions that are. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I actually want to address another question here, Aminata, while we've got you. So there's a question about who receives the questionnaire itself. And if it's the executive director, can we change that? But then there's another question related to that of, can we tell the Qualtrics system to send notifications to multiple grantee staff? So I'm hoping you can address this.
Yeah, of course. So we've been working with the regional offices, and we send them a spreadsheet of grantees that are due to report at a certain time, way ahead that time, right? So we ask them to update or let us know if the contact information that we have for your organization on file is the right contact information, if it's up to date and it's the most relevant email address that we have on file. Then they get back to us, and some have made some updates. So if you'd like for the questionnaire to go to a specific person in your organization, you can communicate that with your regional office staff, and they'll get back to us on that. Unfortunately, we cannot send the questionnaire to multiple people out of fear of duplicate responses. So whoever is the best person to contact at your organization that should be filling this out is who you need to let regional staff know about, and we'll update it on our end as well.
Great. And there's a couple of questions that I just want to make sure we've covered for everyone, because I think everyone is having the same questions of, what if we have multiple awards? What does this look like? So you'll be reporting separately for each EDA award that you have. So yes, if you have 2 EDA awards, you will be submitting these questionnaires for each of your awards. And I just wanted to kind of let you know the cadence here, because there's the semi-annual and the annual. The ED 916 is the semi-annual. This is focused on the activities of your award, and then that's every 6 months. The annual is once a year, and they're both based on the start of your award. And the annual is focused on the outcomes that you're seeing from the activities. So yes, there will be 3 reports per year. And again, they're not very time consuming. We've gone through it a number of times, and many of the questions won't apply to everyone. So we can do a quick demo. I think now might be a good time while we're waiting for a few more questions to come in. I know they're still trickling in, but I do want to make sure that we're providing an opportunity for you to see what it looks like, since I do think that you're eager to see that. So let's do.
Hey Bernadette, while you're
Yes.
can I answer one other question?
Please.
Yeah, so there was an earlier question that asked, I'm trying to find the specific one. When we include census tracts, does it matter where the program is located or where every client in the program is located? So what we're looking for are the specific location for which the outcomes that you are registering in your answers, that's where the tracks that you're referencing as well. So if you have a program that's broad and across 5 counties, but you're specifically referencing an outcome within a specific or responding for outcomes or a specific portion of that broad area, then that's what we're looking for in the response. If you have outcomes across that entire area, then the response will be that entire area.
Great. Okay, so very briefly, just want to show you what it looks like. When you receive the ED916 and you click on the link, you'll see something like this, if not exactly this. So there's a bit of information just reminding you that this is for a semi-annual collection. This is focused on program outputs or activities you're reporting cumulatively since the start of your period of performance. These are the categories of questions. A reminder that not all will apply to you. And again, if you have any questions, here is the email address. So you'll start by entering your EDA award number and then selecting your target beneficiary or client of your award. So I'm just going to go ahead and say regional jurisdictions. Did your organization receive a capital challenge grant? No. Okay, so now we get to the categories of outputs. So there are a couple of different ways you can do this. You can go through in order, or you can go directly to the category that you know you have data for at the moment you're completing this. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I have data for this one because that's the one that's fresh in my mind right now. Did this grant support events, networking, and or referral activities? There are some more instructions here just to let you know kind of what this refers to and to give you a little bit more guidance. So I'm going to say yes and move forward. Now we get into the questions. So one thing I want to show you while we're here is this, these 3 horizontal lines will take you to the categories of outputs. So you can see all the categories, how far you've progressed within the current category that you're in. And you can also skip around if you want, but you can't skip around while you're in the middle of a category. So just want to show you the navigation that's there. So say there was networking and an exhibit. Okay. L2, 20, 30. Okay. Just to show you, I just want to. Okay. So you can. Sorry, I was wrong. So it does show your progress. So I'm 43% of the way done with events, networking, and referrals. My mouse is frozen, I apologize. No for financing activities. Just to move quickly through this because I want to make sure we are able to get to some more questions. So actually, if people want to answer any questions, if my team is noticing any while I'm just going through this, I'm not going to talk through the rest of it. That would be fine.
There's another one that came in that asks, the email that it's sent include the investment award number somehow in it to provide more clarity for those of us with multiple awards. So definitely understand the question. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that via Qualtrics and have it automated or have the process automated. There's 2 things that we suggest. One, if you're not sure, so obviously the cadence will be every 6 months. If you're not, but that may not necessarily give you enough information. If you're unsure, first of all, the email address that Bernadette has been referencing, the program evaluation email address, please reach out to us. We do monitor it. We will help kind of clarify which one it is for you. More than happy to do that. The other thing is that and one of the other things that we were kind of talking about internally is I know if it's feasible, and this may not be feasible for everyone, but also potentially kind of assigning 2 different email addresses or 2 different contacts to different awards may also be a potential solution. So that way, you know that if it's going to one person or one inbox, then it's for one award. If it's going to another person or another inbox, then it's another award. So, but again, I know I definitely understand the question, and unfortunately, it's not something that we have the capability to do at this point. We're always looking to see. This is also a new process for us, so we're, you know, if in the future there's an enhancement or something that is available through Qualtrics, and that may be something that we can do down the road, but unfortunately at this point it's not something that we're able to do.
Yeah, I also saw a question on whether or not there'll be opportunities to provide feedback on the process as you begin to use it. And I want to say, of course, we welcome those type of feedback. This is, Jason just said, this is a new process for us. We want to make sure that, you know, we're getting the data that we need, but that, you know, it's serving you guys as well. So please, as you're using it, if there are ways that we can improve maybe the logic or anything like that, please do not hesitate to reach us at programevaluation@eda.gov.
Okay. So I just want to show, I'm not sure how many people have been paying attention, but I've been skipping some category or some questions entirely, just to show you that it's possible to skip through pretty easily for questions that aren't applicable. But if you try to skip through, there are some questions that are required based on other questions that you've answered, or if they're just required questions. So the system will tell you.
And Bernadette's just making these answers as she goes. There's no indicator that that's what we're expecting you guys to.
Making it up. So, all right, what do we've got? Will the semi-annual ED 916 and the progress report due dates be synced going forward? Some regional offices are trying to work on syncing those up. So it really just depends on how well they can match that. I would work with your EDA project officer just to figure out what the cadence is. If you exceed grant targets, will it measure them above 100%? So these questions are not based on individual grant targets. Those are your own grant award progress metrics that you're tracking. That information is going to be in your progress reports that you're submitting through Grants Online to your EDA project officer. This is entirely separate. So we're not matching this up with your own grant targets. This isn't grant specific in that regard. Can reminders be put in NOAA as well to let you know that you'll be looking for the email and when due? So again, there's no interface with NOAA. This isn't. This is all EDA non-infrastructure programs, and this is all Qualtrics based. So you'll get the email, and we'll just have to remember to look for the email that Aminata mentioned. If you want to work with your EDA project officer to see if they want to put in a reminder, and if that's possible, then that might be an option, but that's not something that we have discussed yet.
Yeah. Should we
Under
have
participating committee members, do we need to submit the full list as a spreadsheet or any other format as backup? No, we don't need supporting documentation. We just need the responses to the questions. We're not going to come back and verify that you actually did have 90 people attend. Your project officer might, but we're not going to be like going through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Well, Bernadette, if I may, can I just say that, you know, while this process has become much more, you know, centralized, where it's us at headquarters that are sending out these questionnaires and figuring out who needs to report, we still are engaging with your project officers in the regional offices. So if, you know, we see an outlier or something just looks totally off, we will reach out to your project offices and hope that they will reach out to you to help us verify those outliers as well. So if there's a way that you can keep track of the data that you're entering, that's always great to have that data as backup.
So there's another question about should we have received our link if we need to report for December, and is that due 12/31 or 1/31? So
Okay.
two parts of that. So the first part is that if you have an award that was made in June, and I say that I think that it's important to note that the dates that we're using are internal dates. So it's possible that you have your award date might be July 1st. It might be recorded as June 30th for us, but around the time that will then you should have received your questionnaire. If you haven't and you think you might be, reach out to us and we can double check and see why that is. And as far as when it's due, I apologize. The specific day is
it's January 5th. We allow a couple more days because of the holidays. So if you were due to report, you should have received an email. But as Jason said, if you think you were meant to report and you haven't received an email, please reach out to us and we can go through our milestones and figure out why you didn't receive one. And then there's a question about whether or not you can have your supervisor go in and look through the data. As of right now, we're only sending the data to, one email address, and the hope is that that person gets all the data and do any background review before submitting the questionnaires. But again, we're really new in this process, so we may figure out a way where you can share the link with multiple people, but only one person gets to submit. And if we can figure that out, and if there's some use there, that's maybe a change that we can make going forward.
Okay, just briefly, while we're on this page, this is what I was referring to at the end of the categories. There's the geography and tools section. So this is one place where we're asking for location information. So is information on the reported outputs available at the county census tract or tribal area level? If possible, please provide the census tract numbers, FIPS codes, or Native American reservations, trust lands, or area names. Again, this is optional. This is information we would love to have if possible. This is an open text box for you to provide that information. If it's not applicable, fine. If no, fine. You can also skip it entirely. And then we're interested in any tools you might have used to plan or assess the progress of your project. If there are any Stats America tools you've used, we'd be interested in knowing that. And if there's any other tools that we haven't listed here, we would also like to know that. And then lastly, we have our narrative section. This is what I was referring to earlier, where you can use this space to report on progress or a success story resulting from the grant that you weren't able to capture through the rest of the questions. So that's what we have, and then you can submit. And so just to let you guys know, I know there have been a couple of questions coming in of, can somebody else review this before I submit it? This would be the time before you hit submit to have somebody come on over and take a look at what you've submitted. That would be fine. Unfortunately, as Aminata has mentioned, we can't have multiple people with the same link. That's just not a feature, or that's just not something that we have ability to do at the moment. So you would have somebody review if you would like to prior to clicking submit. Once you submit, it's done. And again, if you want it, as we said before, if you haven't completed all of the categories, but you have data for that, you can X out and then come back and complete it later by clicking on the same link you clicked on to get here. So,
yeah, and I also Bernadette. So best practice would be, keeping track of this data that now that you know that this is something that you will be reporting on, finding a way to keep track of this data, maybe an Excel spreadsheet or something that you guys can, email back and forth to confirm, the data that you have, and then using that data to complete the questionnaire. And I think that may, in the short term, answer the question about having your supervisor review the data that you're, answering the questionnaire with. So maybe have a spreadsheet or an Excel file that you're sending around and confirming that information.
Again, this is a separate requirement of your EDA awards. So this is not replacing progress reports or your financial reports. All of those are still required. You'll still be submitting them just as you have been through Grants Online. This is different. This is your GPRA reporting. This is not meant at all to replace your current progress reporting. This is, in addition, this is a way for EDA to respond to increasing data needs and data requests that are coming in, but also for us to be able to justify the work that we're doing and the work that you're doing. So this is, we're excited about this new process. This is giving us a way to capture the great work that you're doing in a much more efficient way than we've been doing before. So I know there's still some questions coming in, and I do want to make sure that we're able to answer all of them. So we may have to do that later. Let's see. Let's see here. When does it due? Is that in the email notice? Who determines who gets the email notification? Again, that's a decision that's made between you and your EDA project officer. So if you are the one who needs to get the questionnaire, then that is a decision that will be made at the time. All right, Brett, I know we're at time. We're over time. How should we proceed with this?
Yeah, Bernadette, thanks so much for the presentation and for navigating. Again, we had over 400 folks on the call today, lots of questions coming through. If your particular question wasn't answered, fear not. We've got a lot of great staff at EDA to help you through. We all recognize this is a brand new process for us, but hopefully alleviated some of the fear associated with that. So I did put a link to the website in the chat box. Hopefully you're able to navigate over to the website, but over the next few days, the webinar recording and slides will be made available to all of you to review. But again, keep reaching out, keep asking questions. And I think probably this is one of those examples of the best way to learn is to do it. And again, EDA is there to kind of help you throughout the way. So Bernadette, thanks so much to you and the team for joining us today. Again, for everyone that joined us, we'll have a short questionnaire that'll pop up on the screen. Hope you can respond to some of those questions, and good luck with all of this. I think hopefully after seeing this, it's a chance to really kind of show off the work you're doing and really capture some of that information in a useful form for everyone. So Bernadette, with that, I think we'll close out, and again, encourage folks to follow up if they still have questions after. So thanks again for joining us. All right, have a good day, everybody. Be well, take care.
Thanks, everyone.